Welcome to another episode of In Her Company. This is our Create series where we are drawing business lessons from art. We have put out a query and we are interviewing a wide variety of female creatives to better understand creativity so that you can see how it correlates not only to art but all areas of life. Today we have a special guest, Sho-Joung Kim-Wechsler, who has a lifelong passion for the arts. Formerly, she was VP of Private Equity at Fortress Investment Group and Head of Finance at Artsy. So-Young is now CEO and founder of XVERSO, a platform revolutionizing the way we experience art by merging technology, community, and entertainment to make art accessible to everyone so that it's not confined to physical spaces. She joins us today to discuss digital art, AI, and human creativity. So-Young, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, we're excited because this is a conversation that needs to happen and for so many obvious reasons. But why don't we dive right into it? But first, tell us about you. How did your journey from equity and investments bring you to art?
So I want to keep it very short because I tend to talk a lot about. But in essence, I think I had a passion for the arts since I was born. I think I was just born this way.
Mhm.
I remember I always like to quote my example of my first experience in kindergarten. And my first experience in kindergarten was not, fighting with kids in the mud. It was really standing in front of a poster of Picasso, a girl with a dove about his daughter. And I would spend my afternoon standing in front of the poster and analyzing and looking at the image, looking at the colors, looking at the shadows, looking at the composition,
Wow.
and the intense love of the painter to his daughter and the caress of the girl holding the dove, the
Mhm.
white dove. It obviously is one of the most iconic paintings in the world, but I was immediately drawn to it. It spoke to me in ways that other people could not comprehend. And I had this early on. I had a lot of I wanted to be an artist. I was actually trained in visual arts and also in music. And I thought that I'm going to go into art school. But then instead, my life took a different turn. It's a long story. I keep it short, but in essence, I went from art to finance and from finance back to art.
Okay. So it was always a part of your life. It wasn't like it was some foreign entity that just came in and overwhelmed. You were around it, but just in different ways.
In Yes, exactly. I think it's hard, I think it's very hard to explain when you love art, it never leaves you, no matter what you do. It always is there. And I had many, many moments where I thought, wow, this is destiny or this is fate. When I had moments of happiness or moments of darkness, art was always around me. And many artists in my network, in our network, have been part of this journey also. So this is a lifelong experience on a global scale, almost, if you
Yes.
will.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, your platform, XVERSO. The mission is to make art accessible to everyone. How does digital art, though, fulfill that mission?
It's actually, digital art is a very interesting genre. So just to let you know, because people are saying, oh, this is all new, this is a hype. It's not a hype. Actually, it started off with the first computer software programs, where artists started really reconsidering, their medium. It should not be only just the traditional ways, oil on canvas or sculptures, but artists started experimenting on new mediums. So it's nothing that's been new. It's been part of human evolution.
Hmm.
While technology is advancing, artists are really seeing new ways on expressing themselves. So this is art has always been a reflection of humanity and the time, at the point in time. So there's no way that technology advances to a level where we have today artificial intelligence, and artists are not jumping onto this train. So I just want to clarify that. And what is really beautiful about digital art is technically it doesn't have any boundaries. This is why I'm so attracted to it, because physical art has a lot of boundaries. It has a lot of complications around, things like putting them on walls or putting them in your apartment and thinking about 100 million ways on how to create a new space. Then you have the problem of insurance, and you have so many other problems with physical art that digital art does not. So, what I love about the medium is that it can transcend in any type of medium, and that it also is way faster and more accessible because it can be accessed real time.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd like to, and this is just me because I'm in no way attempting to change your words, but I would like to reframe problems as different considerations
Mhm.
um, when it comes to physical art, because both of them, whether it's digital or physical, is they are both aesthetics. They are both creating a mood or can be used for that. But for the sake of discussion, though, because this is also important, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what digital art is. People are confusing AI with digital art, CGI, and all these other nuances, or newer technologies rather, with it. So, can you give us, kind of anchor us by providing a definition of what digital art is and what are some key points that distinguish it from the more traditional art forms?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, by definition, it's really digital art is anything that's produced through software, whether or not it can be an AI program, it can be CGI, it can be through motion, it can be through video, but anything where you touch software and it creates art, it becomes the medium. This is the definition right now of digital art.
Okay.
I think right now we're in a time where technology is the fourth industrial revolution, and
Yes.
things accelerate on a level in our lifetime that we cannot imagine. So we have today the baby boomer generation that barely had a TV in their household.
Yes.
And we have now children who grew up with an iPhone as a baby. They learn how to wipe. And many of the younger generations have learned coding, for example, at a very young age. So we are in a very interesting time where we have this incredible technology revolution,
Mm-hmm.
and we have multiple generations that had different interactions with technology
Right.
and different ways on how to work with technology. So I think we're in a very, very interesting time, and I understand why people are very confused, why
Mm-hmm.
they are scared, why it is very hard to differentiate between all these different type of, for lack of a better word, genres of software.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
And I think it's really important that we highlight that, digital art does not equal artificial intelligence, right? Digital art is
Yes.
overall description, it's the overall genre, but then within this genre there are a lot of different type of um, branches
Mm-hmm.
that that are part of digital art. So I think photography in the wide, in the most, in kind of like photography in its widest approach is also part of digital art when you think about it, right? It was basically almost, I know art historians will not probably fully agree with me, but photography is for me is in its widest approach, or in its, in its broadest meaning, also the first step into digital art,
Yeah.
because at this time when photography was invented, we had this counter movement of impressionists, etc., and painters, and the art world at the point in time thought this is the end of art, this is the end of the painting. And now, over 100 years later, we still have paintings, but we also have photography as a form of art.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that because it reminds me of a discussion that I had with my family just this weekend. We were out driving on a Sunday, and I was telling them like it's been, throughout history that, since cars has been on the road. But on Sundays, I remember being little, and that was the day that people drove slower. And I remember there was one car per household. And part of the reason why they were driving slower is because if you had a car, that meant you were doing well for your family. And now people don't even think about it. And so they drive down, and just like we see the motorcyclists wave to one another, well, people in cars used to wave to one another because you're with your family. Everybody's dressed in their Sunday best, and it's like, all right, you're doing well too. Glad to see you. But also, we had one TV. There was one TV in a household.
Mhm.
There was no choice. Like, we took turns watching whatever we wanted to watch on TV, but there was one. There wasn't one in each room. And so when we are talking about this conversation for art, you are absolutely right. The canvas is different. At one time, there was, you got out your paints and your watercolors and whatever the tools was, your blank canvas. And now the canvas happens to be on a tablet or on a computer program. So the tools have different, but painting is still here. It's not all digital. But I wanted to start off with that to kind of begin with a perspective with what people are actually familiar with across the generations, but also what the definition of digital art is so that they can understand what they're looking at and not feel necessarily the need to attack,
Mhm.
for lack of better words, as with myself as well. But one of the concerns is also preserving the traditional artistic techniques. And so, how do you foresee not only now that those traditional artistic techniques are being preserved, but also along with the advancement of digital tools and technology, because technology is advancing at an exponential rate, but these traditional methods are not necessarily.
I think this is a very, very good question, and it's a tough question, and
Mhm.
it's also a very thoughtful question because it has this element around, what are we going to maintain certain techniques, certain forms of artistry the way we have in the past, and my sense is probably we will because when you think about I like to think about it like cooking, right? So my husband and I, we always fight about cooking because I like to have the nouveau approach. I want to I want to create traditional recipes and have like, creative freedom on how to mix it up and have some new influence of other spices or other ways. And I think this is very similar. So I think that there will always be the traditional form of art in certain ways on how we look at it, but I think there will be influences through software or through other ways. And also the world is changing, the world is becoming more global, the
Yeah.
world is becoming more international. And I think more technical, more technological, more, beyond just the earth rim. Now we're in space. So I think there will be a lot of influences around how we will look at these traditional forms and techniques, how we can optimize it, or how we can even creatively use them for new collaborations or new forms of media. And I think a perfect example, for example, is the work that we have on our platform from amazing ink painter and artist Zhang Chongbing, who was trained in a very traditional way of painting and has created this incredible masterpiece called the watercolor story. It's mind blowing. It's a work that was painted in gouache, but then later animated through his incredible art team called Seafire. And it I think to me, in many ways, this is where we are at today. So you have an artist who is trained in a classical way and now discovers new medium, discovers technology, and also starts creating the work and exhibiting it in completely new canvases that were not possible before. And it's accessible to the public. It's accessible in many, many different directions. And I think we have this example, perfect example of someone who works in a very traditional room, but now is utilizing new media to
Yeah.
showcase art in new ways. And I
Exactly.
think this is just the beginning. And I think that um, it's also interesting when you look at all the auction results of art houses, and still, we still have the Picassos, we still
Yes.
have, we still have all the traditional painters, and people still like to invest in those and still like to have them. But at the same time, we have now this new genre where people discover new ways of creativity in ways that were not possible before. So I think both will go hand in hand. And it will be interesting to see where the journey will go. We on XVERSO, we definitely want to influence this journey as well. We want to be part of it. We want to ultimately direct it, or also, majorly influence this direction in a way that is positive and for humanity on the planet. But yeah, I think it is a very good and valid question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so you see it as a way of adding further reverence, further value to the traditional methods because that's where they originate from, but also that digital art is an expansion on that. It provides people with a canvas that can be more flexible than what they're currently working with in the physical spaces as well. Is what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, I kind of akin that to biomimicry, um, which is drawing influences from nature when you're putting them into structures, whether it's architecture or just a way to respond to problems and issues that are present just in life, modern life or whatnot. Nature is still there. Nature is still the foundation. Nothing can ever change that. However, the way we work with that, the way we interact with it, um, the lessons that we can draw from it are numerous. So that's
Hmm.
kind of similar to the space we find ourselves in now. I wanted to, before we move on from that, I wanted to use the example that you just provided about the artist and his work being animated. Um, what insight do you think that we can draw from these collaborations? Because obviously it's a human artist and he's using digital art, and perhaps there'll be another um, extension of that should he decide to go the AI route or become involved at some point. So, what do you believe these collaborations between man and technology reveal about the nature of creativity?
Uh, so first of all, thank you so much for this question. This is a very good one, and I thought about this question for a very long time. Because there's a lot of different perspectives on this,
Yes.
and it's also very ambiguous. People have different opinions. I honestly think that in a positive utopia kind of scenario,
Hmm.
that the technology will enable to find new ways on creativity of expressing themselves in ways that were never possible before. And let me explain why. So I've been thinking about this. So in as a young kid, as in my art practice, I had a lot of talents. So I had visual arts talents. I love to paint. I love to write poetry, but I also created my own music, and I also created performance art.
Wow. Okay.
And in my artworks, these were all combined in one. So
Okay.
we had the music component that I created, we had the poetry component that I created, and we also had the performance art piece. And it was overwhelming for everybody. So I had a very conservative art teacher who always told me that we cannot be poets. We have to be artists. We cannot be we cannot be poets, we cannot be painters, we cannot be musicians. We have to choose one thing and one thing only.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is what you hear a lot.
Yeah.
This is the old school way of thinking of specialization. I think that's also not only in the industry of arts, that's also in many other industries. And I think there's a danger to that. I think
Yeah.
there's a danger to that
Agreed.
you become a very binary person. The thinking is very narrow minded, and it's very um, it's actually counterproductive for creativity. On the one hand, you probably become the master of a certain skill, but then on the other hand, you miss out on so many other influences. And art, the beauty of art is it's the creative expression of the mind. It has no boundaries. It has no rules, no regulations. That's why we are so interested in it, right? That's why we're celebrating the artists. That's why we're celebrating music. That's why we're celebrating visual art, performance art. And I think through technology now, we can combine all the elements that a creative mind wants to put together, and there are
Wow.
no more boundaries. So if you look into the works that we showcase, for example, oftentimes it's combined with poetry. It's
Yes.
combined with the artist's own music, and some of the music elements are incredible. Sometimes I look at the art and I feel like, wow, I'm not even interested in the visual part. I'm only interested in the music part. Or wow, the visual part is amazing, but the poetry that's part of it is also amazing. So it's really, really incredibly beautiful of
Hmm.
what we can do now with technology. And we talked about this before as well, right? Because we talked about if Picasso, well, let's not take Picasso, let's take Da Vinci. If Da Vinci would live today, and Da Vinci
Yes,
hundreds of years ahead of his game, right? And he had to
exactly.
hide his knowledge and his foresight because otherwise he would have gotten into a very difficult situation in a very Catholic dominated environment in a time where, creative expression were not as welcomed. So if you think about Da Vinci, if he were to live today, what would he do? And I think
And that's
I
even exciting to just think about.
Mhm.
What would artists like that, Da Vinci, Van Gogh, Picasso, the numerous others around that time, what would they do today? Their perspective may be different than what most people would think.
I don't think they would work on, honestly, I don't think they would work with traditional methods. They would use them as a training ground, but I'm certain they would want to work with something that's already hundreds of years ahead of their time.
Hmm.
And definitely, most definitely, something with technology, something with the world we have, things we have not seen yet.
Yeah.
And that would be interesting to their minds.
Yeah. And it would be no telling, given what we know of them and know of their works, there would be no telling what they would produce with the technology available to them today.
Yeah, well, we could come up with some hypothesis, but I,
That's a whole nother conversation.
that would be my bet. My
Yeah.
bet would be this. Especially with Da Vinci. Da Vinci was always. I mean, Da Vinci was so ahead, centuries ahead of his time. He would not. He would not be interested in something traditional today. I think he probably would be bored even with the existing technology. So
Yeah.
probably
That's because he's already done it, though. You
he
know?
would probably creating something. What is humanity going to do in 500 years from now? Where are we going to
Yeah.
be? Are we going to be on this planet? Are we going to be somewhere else?
Yeah.
That probably would be a Da Vinci.
Yeah. And one thing about him, because our youngest son absolutely loves Da Vinci for his body of work, and people don't know he was created the prototype to what became the hang gliders, the
Yes.
tank. He created weapons. He was not only an artist, he wrote even. So Da Vinci was as multifaceted as they come. But I also, another point that we agree on is that, and this is part of our values as well at In Her Company. I honestly believe, and we honestly believe, that choose one is responsible for the death of more dreams and visions than what we may ever know. And while it probably came about as such as, many other things, well intended, while it may have started out as just an attempt to hone focus, over time it has become more about control. Um, and with the multitude of issues that we are facing today, that choose one mentality is not capable of addressing them. It requires people who are multi passionate, who see the entire vision with its moving pieces, multiple components, and who are not afraid to step into untreaded territory in order to resolve them. So, complex, multifaceted issues need a somewhat, if you want to say complex, but also multifaceted solution. And choose one cannot deliver that. It has its limitations. But that in itself is another conversation. So what do
I
you
cannot wait to have that one with you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll welcome that. Perhaps we'll come back to that. Yeah, probably by the summertime. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. How do you foresee this, though? Sticking with the same topic before moving on, this relationship between man and technology evolving the next decade. Because you have some fabulous examples on your XVERSO platform of people who are headed in that direction. So, being that you're up close and personal and physically encountering this and otherwise on a daily basis, what is your forecast for that?
I think that I think technology will more and more become more influential in the industry, and I think more artists will discover the medium. I think um, also the instrument itself will become better because it's at this moment, as of today, not really amazing. You know, I mean, unfortunately, you can, if people plop an idea into Dali, I'm sorry, Dali, but sorry guys, but you can tell it's AI. You know, you see it, and you know, it's not. There's like something wrong. You know, someone has like six hands, six fingers instead of five. You know, that's not right. You
Or
know, there's
fangs instead of teeth. Yeah.
exactly. And you know, sorry, Dali guys, sorry, ChatGPT, but it's not there yet. But I think that over time it will become better,
Okay.
and I think that also, you know, what I'm noticing, many of the artists we're collaborating with, especially the ones who work in the digital space, are oftentimes also coders themselves, or
Mm.
they have a team of engineers to work with them on what they want to accomplish. And this is very interesting. And I think it's this interesting mix between, you know, people who are creative, visual, but at the same time working closely with people that are very, you
Linear.
know, engineering focus. So, and but both work hand in hand and both are needed in this environment. So I think it's a beautiful thing to me, because this is also what Exerso is all about, right? Because we are a technology platform, but it's also about creativity, it's about art. So we're
Yes.
combining these two elements, art and technology. And this is an area that I am extremely passionate about, and also extremely bullish on.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's another tough question for you.
You have a lot of tough questions.
Well, hey, that's why this discussion is so important because of the present time that we find ourselves in. So I appreciate you willing to, tough it out
Very,
with me.
very good questions. I'm so impressed. I'm really, really impressed. I love it. I love
Thank,
it so much.
thank you. Um, AI, how does AI impact the notion of authorship
Mhm.
and originality in digital art? And
It,
maybe we should say not even, but yeah, just art being this is the world that we're moving into. So how does it impact?
I think, so. This is a really good question, and I think this is a question that a lot of people also have different opinions on. And I think here's mine.
Mhm.
Um, I think I think through AI, obviously, many more people can create digital art now, or can create digital images or videos that they were never able to do before. Not in this level. You usually had to work with experts, or you had a design agency, or you had like other type of people to support you. Now through software that's consumer oriented, you can create your own music, you can create your own art, you can create your own videos, and I think this is a phenomenal thing.
Yeah,
um, at the same time, obviously, there's a risk of, you know, inflation of the works. People not being. I think you indicated that many times. You know, how do I know the difference? How do I know the difference that this is a real art piece created by an amazing artist, or
exactly.
is it created through AI? And I think this is an incredibly valid point. I think there will be a lot of inflation of value of digital art. So through AI, and I think it's very risky because there is no regulation ethics around it right now. So everybody, I mean, obviously we're right now a little bit in the wild, wild west of, hey, everything is possible. And yeah, let's see what happens. Right. Um, and so I think the question to me is really, well, how do we identify and differentiate ourselves from works that are just, prompted in a consumer AI software versus art that has been created through the mind of an artist and has a lot of merit in its existence as an artistic piece.
Right.
And I think one solution around it could be that blockchain will solve this issue, at least for authentication and provenance.
Gotcha.
Um, but at the same time, I think the curatorial aspect of platforms will become even more important because uh, you you as a curator, or you as an NFT marketplace, or you as an art marketplace, you have to really be very clear around what the guidelines and requirements are for creators to create their work, and also to maintain its value, and also to maintain its value in the context of human history.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. And I want to pick out a nuance there that you just mentioned in case some of our viewers or listeners missed it rather. What you just touched on was that there is a difference between an image or art created from a prompt versus a human using a software program to create something that is their original work. So that's another nuance that, is fine tuned. It may be a very thin line, but anyone can enter in a prompt. Not everyone can can produce what an actual human has in their mind, even though they're using a digital medium to do so. So that's important.
Very well put together, exactly. And I think we have works of art that are created through AI software. So when you look at the landscapes of Albert Abdullah Wang, an
Mhm.
amazing up and coming young emerging artist, very, very beautiful man. And his works are based on his own Chinese ink paintbrush landscapes. And he converts them into landfills. So when you look at the work, you think it's a beautiful, landscape in a traditional Chinese mastery, but in reality, it's landfills. And he has created an entire series around it. It's by the way,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
phenomenal, right? This is an example. Another example is Yves Peitzner, who's also another really amazing artist. He created a software program in which he connected his brainwaves through a visual output, where his brainwaves are measured and are creating visual stimuli into different type of colors, into different type of sounds, and that's code, right? You use part of
Yeah.
the code, you use part of
Perfect.
breakthrough medtech, and you put brain sensors into your head, and basically they uh, it sounds very very layman term, but in essence they measure your brain waves and then create a visual output and audio output from your brain waves.
Oh my
So
god.
this is the type of art that we endorse and that we love, and that's very different than going into Dala and saying, hey, give me a painting of a fish in the style of
Exactly. Exactly.
exactly.
Oh
Hmm.
my gosh. That's amazing. That is amazing. No, I get exactly what you're saying because working in telecom, we learn wave division multiplexing,
Hmm.
which is frequencies have a range, they have a number, and it determines what's light. You get into the infrareds, the ultraviolets, but colors translate into numbers, numbers translate into colors, and colors determine frequency. Just to put it mildly, is a little bit more involved than that, but one yields the other. And I don't think the average person would think that when they're seeing like a color, it's like, oh, that equals, pi, like 3.14 or something. Just, being silly about it, of course, because it does not. But, you know, numbers and colors and frequencies, they're all form a picture. So, do you believe though?
And I would bet with you there are, and I guarantee you that there are artists that work with these type of, measurements, frequencies, and brainwaves, because perception is all relative, right? And it's
Yes.
like, and there's only certain things that the human mind and the human eye can see, and the brain can actually see. So it's actually very interesting, and obviously a lot of the op art artists work with this type of illusion. There's so many artists that work with that, with
Yeah.
perception. And so it makes sense that you work with different innovative technologies, and try to translate those into art.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think it's helpful to draw analogies that the average person can relate to for complex um, concepts and ideas, because that helps ground them and that helps make what they're looking at or what they're trying to make a decision about less scary, less fearful. Um, because even like frequency, that's the difference between AM and FM. It's
Yeah.
the reason why a microwave works at one frequency and a handheld cordless phones work at another. So these are everyday examples, but when you put it in that context, it's like, ah, this is what they're talking about. Um, do you believe though that there are certain aspects of creativity that AI will never be able to replicate, yet alone understand?
I'm always a little bit careful with the never. Every
Yes,
time
because that can come back to bite you. So
that word never, it bite me in the back. I would say we don't
same.
know. We don't. It's hard to predict. I would say, AI also had setbacks, right? Like we talked about this before, where it was a hot topic, then it had setbacks, then it came back, then it was, down again, and there were a lot of like predictions around, oh my God, we're going to live in this matrix scenario very much soon, right? And that hasn't happened either. And
Right.
when you look at all the algorithms, on consumer platforms, without, okay, I mentioned a few names before, but there are certain problems with it, right? Like we call it the black box problem. We call it around problem around biases. When you look into certain, when a platform profiles you in a certain way,
Right.
then all of a sudden, you just get this type of genre of film, or this type of genre of music, which is very dangerous, right?
Right.
Because I'm uh, this profile and I have this interest, doesn't mean that I'm not interested in something else.
Exactly.
And so I think it, I think it's very important that consumers are really, really aware, not only around AI, but technology in general. What is it used for? What are people doing with your data? What are people doing with your information? And I think it's it's crazy to me in a way that people are so afraid of AI, but they're not afraid of using social media, or they're not afraid of using emails or using their
Yes.
computer. Because in many ways, it's just an extension of what's being done today, how we as consumers use technology today. And we have very, very little insight and visibility into how this information is being used. And so I think, to me, AI is not a hindering point here. It's not anything new that we already do not know. I think it's an extension, though, of what's known.
Uh-huh.
And because it's new, people are afraid. But I think the bigger question around this is, well, shouldn't we then be generally be afraid of technology, and shouldn't we then figure out, what do we have really a thorough understanding of everything that we're doing on a daily basis, and how technology impacts that, and what is being done with our data
Yeah.
points.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. Because these things are just, they continue to increase. There's a reason why the Eula, and do you agree to these terms of service? And it's like, how
Yes.
many pages do I have to read?
Mhm.
Um, but the format changes. The under what underlies it does not necessarily. How can and our understanding of that is what determines it largely, and what we're exchanging for from that, because the internet, not the internet itself, rather, that would be wrong to say, but due to free trials and um, premiums or incentives to get information, people are so accustomed, they've been conditioned to give up information to get something for free. They don't necessarily realize that it's not free. You're giving up, maybe an email address this time, but it's the triangulation and what people can determine from that as a result. So, that in itself is a more nuanced conversation. Um, what, in what way would you encourage, or do you think that artists can use AI um, as iteration? In other words, as a way to enhance their creative process rather than complete it, than replace it. I'm sorry.
Um, I mean, there are so many factors on and examples of art and artists who are using AI as an extension of their practice, right? For
Hmm.
example, the artists I mentioned before, but also other artists working with an AI robot, for example, to create art. Or when you look at, for example, Rafik Anadol's work, he's a super famous artist now, and he created an AI program where he wanted to present what a dream would look like for an AI, and that's how
Oh,
he and that's how he got really famous. It's also in the MoMA and in
oh,
many
wow.
institutions.
Okay.
And it's also beautiful. It's very beautiful because it has this visual aspect. It's generative also, and has sound aspects, and the colors are incredibly beautiful. Very, very, very can highly recommend. But I think it's really an extension and tapping into ways that were not possible before. Oftentimes, also for sound effects, for motion, for so many different ways that traditional artists were limited in doing. So now they can explore this technology to extend their art practice and to extend their portfolios.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And that's something that you and I discussed earlier too. The fact that, well, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon about AI and its capabilities for automation and how it can help create. I think that people need to also be aware of AI is not a begin all to end all. In other words, you can enter a prompt knowing absolutely nothing about a subject, and because of AI, whether it's Chat GPT or some other program, some other software, can walk away with an intelligent response. However, the prompt that you enter as a novice is entirely different than a prompt someone else would enter as an expert. And so I fully expect, and I believe we're seeing some of that now, whereas people are filling their social media profiles with, AI generated content, and it sounds great. The problem that person will eventually run into is that, what if you're asked to speak on the topic based on the information that you are presenting that you know absolutely nothing about? You're not going to sit on a stage or in an interview and chat GPT give me the answer,
Hmm.
right? So it is an entry point. It can help with iteration. And like what we're discussing, it can help with enhancement. But without the experience, that's only going to take you so far. So if you're looking to go into a market and create something quick and get whatever you can from it and leave, that's one thing. Okay. There are plenty of those deals. But if you're looking at it for longevity, You better have something to back it up.
I totally agree with your perspective, and I think I was just thinking, and probably many listeners and are also thinking about this when they utilize ChatGPT on a daily basis or for their work. I you know I mean, I enjoy it because there are certain things in my profession that I do not enjoy, and
Yeah.
I use ChatGPT for that. And but I have to constantly steer it in a certain direction, right? Because it's giving me a very oftentimes a very generic response
Hmm.
that is meaningless, right? Because it is
Right.
meaning. So the question to me is oftentimes, well, what are we trying to say? Here's my hypothesis, here is my argument, and how do you get to the conclusion? And I think
Right.
you need to stay on top of that. And this is the intention of the human, right? Whoever is the creative mind behind whatever the output is. And I think the intention is really important. And to steer it into an intention is a little bit harder because it
Yeah.
doesn't provide the results yet that we want. And I think exactly to your point, which you considered as expertise, right? It's related to a certain topic where where you're an expert on, or you're not an expert, but you want to have you want to get a refined opinion. And
Right.
I think also we have to bear in mind that these machines are fed by developers and based upon their perspectives and their mindsets and their logics and their thinking, and it's their individual as well as whoever the company is. And I think that's also a little bit difficult because when you think about science, should it be influenced by commercial interest, or should science be not influenced by commercial? This is a bigger question. It's
Oh, yeah.
philosophical.
Exactly. And now we
Uh,
know how biases enter because if
exactly.
these are human minds that are actually feeding the AI, then they are not perfect, which means AI is not perfect.
Yeah, and there's different perspectives on this in the world, and different
Hmm.
institutions have different opinions, different countries have different opinions. But I think I find it very dangerous when people become experts in a certain area without having a scientific background, or without having an academic background, and really understanding all the different nuances of an issue. And you know I think it's a positive because all of a sudden you have access to information that you cannot easily understand as a specialist or a scientist or an expert, which is beautiful. But at the same time, it's the question to me is, how do we know that this is objectively the right information? How do we know that this is really scientifically where we want to be at, or
Right.
academically, or in its conclusion? Did we ensure that whatever our conclusion is, have we considered all of the different perspectives that are relevant for coming to a conclusion? And I think that's where the danger is with ChatGPT, because if you're not aware of that, if you go with the mindset of, oh, I want to create this scientific paper on a certain topic, uh, it will help you writing it, but it will
Right.
not help you getting to the conclusion and scientific evidence that you need in order to get to a result that would be satisfying.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. True. Because experience leads one way. Um, a lack of experience can lead in an entirely different direction. How is I want to kind of bring this back into art, but this is just like so good. Oh my gosh, because this is a much more in-depth conversation than for the scope of what we are presenting here. But, of course, appreciate the insights, and even touching on this subject and different nuances, I'm sure will spur other conversations as well. So, thank you for engaging in that with me. Um, what is the biggest misconception or fear that people have about AI's role in art?
Oh, I love this question. Because it's not related to art, actually. Art is also one industry, but I think it's more a question of humanity. It's much bigger
Yes.
than art
Yes.
industry. because people are afraid of AI, right? And
Yeah.
so, well, the world is divided on this, right? You have on the one hand,
Of course we are. Why would we not be?
you have the ones who work with AI, who invest in AI, who develop AI, obviously pro AI and very excited. And then you have the other world that doesn't fully comprehend the software, doesn't fully comprehend the algorithm, doesn't understand the development, and doesn't understand, what does it actually mean for the world? Am I going to be replaced? Will I be fired? Am I going to lose
Yeah.
my job? How is that? You know, and I think all of those concerns are valid. And I think technology progress has always two sides uh, of the
At
painting.
least two.
You have the verso and you have the recto, so ex verso. So it's kind of like it's interesting. I think for artists, the fear is very much, well, how are we going to ensure that my work is still recognized, and how do we ensure that my work is not copied, not forged? How do I ensure that I my work can be differentiated in the market from everybody else?
Value and replication.
Well, and
Yeah.
collect will have the same issue, because it's really, how do I ensure that this is a real Picasso and not an AI generated Picasso, right? They're just
Yeah.
to put an extreme example. And and then for many professions, for many positions, how do we ensure that how do I, people are afraid of job safety, job security, and many other topics. So I think all of those topics are valid, and so it's not a it's a it's a very difficult question, but it's also an open question, because it's both sides are relevant here in the conversation.
Yeah. Definitely. I ran across an article that acknowledged that it will definitely cause changes in multiple industries. But this person was speaking specifically towards people who are concerned about AI replacing their jobs. And his take on it was that AI is actually going to help us be more human. It's going to remove the tasks that, true enough, anyone can do that doesn't take a great deal of thought, but it will elevate the creativity and the ingenuity that each individual has within themselves to bring and to do only what they can. Um, we've seen our society change from agrarian and largely entrepreneurial to now where the majority of people work for someone else. And so the creativity that's been silenced are exchanged willingly over the past decades, if not century now. Um, maybe AI is the prompt that we need to return to that, to get some of that back. Not that entrepreneurship is necessarily an easy journey, but perhaps now we can see that it is a necessary one.
So I'm taking a deep breath, because this is such a, because it's really, the topic in itself is also way above and beyond just a certain industry, right? This
Yeah.
is really a question around humanity and what defines us as humans, right? And what does it mean in the future, in today, what does it mean tomorrow, and then in the future ahead. I think there are some, obviously, with innovation, there's always like the positive side of things, mundane tasks. We
Hmm.
talked, I can't wait for someone
Yeah.
running my household errands, because I don't enjoy them, and hopefully I have an AI that will manage it all for me, so I can spend more time with art and artists and creativity,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
but will it continue? to divide the world into rich and poor? Will it continue to
Mm,
divide the world into people who do have access to technology and people who do not?
yeah.
And I think, the danger always, this is my opinion with technology or with innovation, is there's always special interest behind it. And can the special interest is special interest really good enough to create something really great for humanity, or is it going to misuse it and abuse it in a way that it's benefiting the few and not the many? So, I think the danger, I think, while there's many ethical considerations into this, and human greed has always been a factor of humanity, and many reasons of why the world is where it is today. And
No, really? I had no idea.
I am, I wonder if through technology advancement and through AI, all these human elements, these faulty elements that we have as our human traits that are not positive for the planet, that are not
Yeah.
positive for humanity, whether or not we can come to a point where we make better decisions because it's less around, the emotional factors that hinder us to be really amazing for this planet, for lack of better word.
Yeah, yeah. Power dynamics, I believe, was the word you were searching for. Maybe that okay, never mind. Oh, um, what is the and by the way, I'm gonna ask this question, but I do not believe that it is their sole responsibility, but for the sake of this conversation, what is the art community's role in assuring that AI is used responsibly and ethically, as we were talking about, in the creation and dissemination of digital art?
this was I love this question also. This was one, I think this was the toughest question for me in all your questions.
Really?
Yeah, I thought this was really tough because,
Okay.
and not because it's a tough question, because in tough in the sense of very good question. I
Mhm.
had it really got me thinking. It like I kept like my inner monologue, and I started also talking with other people about this and what they think. But you know, how much responsibility and ethics can we as individuals take? How much is out of our control? How much is within our control?
Right.
I think, the problem is there's responsibilities for the people who produce and
Mhm.
who finance, who invest, and who create this technology. And I think there's an element of that. There's an element around um, the consumer's responsibility, of course,
Right.
and on the receiving end. And then I think there's a responsibility around XVERSO as a platform. What is our responsibility?
Gotcha.
And I think, we cannot, XVERSO cannot stop progress. We cannot stop,
Right. Right.
that nobody can really stop progress. Progress is,
It's
is
gonna
something
happen
that's
without
gonna
with or
happen
without you.
whether or not you like it or you don't. And
Right.
it's progress and it's innovation, and people are interested in this advancement. We as a platform, I think we can do certain things. So for example, we require proof of the artistic merit of the work. So on our platform, we do not allow our artists to create works that were just generated through a prompt, unless obviously there's exceptions as well, right? Because if they want to make a statement, there's another, it depends on the context again. But
Gotcha.
generally, from an output perspective, I think it's really important that there is a very clear, uh, sophisticated perspective of an artist and creation of the work, as well as the relevance in the context of time. And I think we're looking at this very intensively. And so I think this is our little contribution to what we can influence.
Right.
I think what we can influence also is to create awareness on the topic. I think AI and the impact on society has been a topic for XVERSO and my other company, XVERSO, for a very long time. Since 2016, AI keeps on hunting me. I've been thinking about this topic a lot, and it varies. It's gotten also ahead of its game. It's now starting. Obviously now we at the time we didn't have like really strong consumer models. Now we're starting to have consumer software, and I think there is certain things that everybody can do. Obviously, start really educating yourself, learn a lot about it. Have an open mind, be critical,
Hmm.
don't believe in, ask questions. And I think at the same time, um, there's a lot of responsibility with the technology companies and responsibility with the people who finance the technology companies. And I think it's it's beyond it's beyond the individual's control only,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. No, totally agree with that. That's why I preface that statement where with I don't believe that it is solely the our community's responsibility. I have a saying that everywhere you go, there you are. And what that means is that if you continue to face the same challenge over and over again, and you face it where the variables change, like different people, but you get the same response, then you are the variable more than likely that needs to change.
Mhm.
And we live in a time where there's so, I think that humans have largely, at least in America, but perhaps elsewhere, but this is where we live, that humans have gotten used to outsourcing what's really their responsibility. And so you see groups of people screaming at one thing or another about, well, why don't you? We want to know what you're doing to be responsible. How are you going to take control of the issue? And it's like, wait a minute, this is community. Does not it begin with you? You know, where are you going to take your own responsibility? Where are you going to hold yourself accountable? Um, it's one person's responsibility to create something that's ethical, moral, legal, etc., and to put it out in the world. But it is not their responsibility necessarily to police you, to control your own urges, to control whatever biases that you have that comes from within. And so, in a time where it's easy to be keyboard warriors or to be outraged, more so at the result than the origin of the issue. Like we're more outraged at the smoke screen than a root cause, because perhaps addressing root cause would require something for you from you. It'll cost you something, and you don't want to pay that cost. So you're going to scream at the smoke screen, and everybody's going to join you doing that. So the changes a lot of times that we want to see must truly come from us first. And if we don't want to undertake that change, then how dare you yell at somebody else for doing the same?
I think that is so true. And and I think we are trained to consume, right? In the
Hmm.
United States. But it's also in all Western countries, or and actually anywhere in the world,
Yeah,
right? Like
anywhere that influence is. Yeah.
anywhere you have industrial production, right? Like
Hmm.
we are born into consumption, and we don't ask questions. We don't ask questions of how did this milk come into my fridge, or how was were these clothes made.
Right.
And I think this is a very important topic, because if we want to create changes on this planet, I think we have to ask a lot of questions and reconsider the supply chains, for example, right? This
Oh
is
yeah.
a
Oh
much
yeah.
bigger
Supply
question,
chain is big. Yeah.
but it's I think I think we have to get out of the mindset of just being a consumer, or just taking the information as it is and just disseminating it in a way
Mhm.
that is beneficial to you as an individual. I think we have to like really find new ways on how we work with the information that's been given, and
Yeah.
also step back and really ask a lot of questions. And that is very inconvenient, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
we are lazy. We don't want we are creatures of habit. We want to do the same thing over and over again because
Confirmation bias.
if it's beneficial for me, I don't want to change it.
Right.
And I think we need to be really aware and conscious around what we're doing, why we're doing things, and ask many questions. And I think if we start changing our behaviors and analyzing our behaviors and becoming very conscious, and art, for example, is a perfect medium for that, because you have to put yourself into someone else's head.
Yeah.
You're with art, you're forced into thinking in a different way, which is not yours.
Yes.
Think it's the perfect form of empathy. It's a perfect form of compassion, and it's a perfect form of understanding another human or another being. And I think that is so important to really create change and to really create new ways on how to go about life, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yes, agree. Because I believe that's ultimately what we're talking about. Like, this is very much a conversation about digital art, AI, and human creativity. But I believe that a lot of the questions and the response, your responses to it, actually have to do with life. How are we living? What is the life that we are pursuing? These are life issues. They're not necessarily relegated to technology. Um, on that note, though, what is your forecast for the future relationship between AI, digital art, and human creativity?
I think it will continue to grow together.
Hmm.
I think we will find ways on how we artists will utilize artificial intelligence and other type of software to extend their creativity, to extend their artistic expressions. And we will see, I think, a lot of mixed media, digital art mixed with visual art mixed with sound, mixed with performance, mixed with motions. And I think we will start recreating new realities. I think we will start, an artist creates a story and a perception around their work, right?
Yeah.
They basically this is they basically showcase their mind in the most vulnerable way, where everybody can see it, and the more the work is seen, the better it is for the artist, or the more it's heard, the better it is. So basically they put out their inner being out to the world. And I think for an artist it is and will be even more important now to invite their fans and their collectors
Yeah.
to come to their world. And I think these worlds of what's in your mind versus what you as a fan can experience will become closer and closer through technology.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I can foresee that as well. Um, what advice do you have, given the landscape? What advice do you have for either a traditional artist looking to transition into digital art, or vice versa? Because there are people that want to, maybe they started out in a digital space and now they're like, hey, there's something to this traditional space. So, what advice would you have for both of them?
This is the direction right now we're seeing as well on our platform, because initially I thought we're just going to have our traditional physical artists, and it started drastically changing. And we have now traditional physical artists like Zhang going into the digital realm, and we have digital artists who are now starting going into the physical realm.
Oh,
And
wow. So,
this
you're seeing that happen.
it's happening already,
Okay.
yes. Why we also have works, for example, that are both, physical
Oh,
and
wow.
digital. It's already happening, right? There's a lot of cross collaboration, and it's really really exciting. I think for many of the physical artists, they want to venture. An artist mind is always curious, is always innovative, is always like want to know, what's next, what can I do, how can I express myself. So digital is really, really exciting for them. And I think they are looking for the collaborators, or looking for ways on how they can create a digital work together with different type of creators or engineers and musicians. So
Yes.
this is one thing that we are also encouraging, and we also help with our network, and we're still figuring out how we can be better in what we're doing, because it's still a little bit kind of like mom and pop shop where we introduce. And I wonder how we can do this on a go forward basis, on a much larger scale. But that's one thing. And then on the digital realm, people, it's exactly the opposite, right? People who started off in the digital room are starting now to also showcase in traditional galleries and museums and have physical works. So I think there's a lot of marriage between these two groups, and eventually it will be just normal that you know artists will work in all kinds of mediums.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So your advice to them is to be open to where their journey leads, or open to opportunities.
I absolutely think so, and I think it, like as always, right, within any kind of profession, I think digital innovation should not be ignored, right? And it's better to be on top of it and be a creator, or be a platform, or be an engineer, or working with engineers to know to be on top of the innovation versus being on the receiving end of things.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Last question. What does creativity mean to So-Young?
This is also you are, by the way, you are so fantastic. I love your questions so much. You are so good. You're so deep and understanding the issue, and really, I these were some of the best questions I received in a while. So I'm
Oh, wow.
very,
Honored.
so impressed with you, by the way. So
Thank
impressed.
you.
I really spent a lot of time thinking about this. So going back to the question around, what does creativity mean for me? You know, I to me, freedom of the mind is the most important thing. This is my highest value. I came from a world where I was extremely like to an extremely point trained to perform a role in society, with the expectations of whatever those expectations are. And coming to America, and coming actually helped me looking at things from very, very different perspectives. Because it's about you as an individual here. What do you want to accomplish versus you as an individual do not matter. You have to be part of a society that you have to fit in. And I think that's also not like, it's an extreme example, and that's not true neither, right? There's like gray shades around the statement, right? It's also, there's a lot of expectations here as well to perform in certain ways, etc. And
But this is your story, so yes.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So but what is important for me is freedom, and I want, so creativity is, and that's why I love working with artists, and that's why I love working in the creative space, because there are no rules and
Mhm.
regulations, or requirements in terms of your creativity. I mean, that's what I love about creativity and art. It's the ultimate freedom.
Yes.
And and whether or not it's going to be applied, and whether or not you can sell it, or whether or not you can do other things with it, that's a completely different question. But the origin, the creativity itself, is completely free, and it's an ideal state for me, for the mind,
Mhm.
where I'm just in a different headspace of what can and cannot be done, what is possible. And I think this is very interesting for me.
Yeah. Good. And how can our listeners and viewers reach you?
Oh, they can always reach me through the platform, and then also through email, obviously. So through XVERSO.io. We also have a contact page there. They can always reach me there. They can message me through LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all the social media channels. So I can be reached on all different type of mediums, from email to social media to website.
Gotcha. And all of them are the profile name is XVERSO.
It's all XVERSO,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. So
Yes.
Young, thank you so much for engaging in this heavy conversation relevant of our time. I've enjoyed it, enjoyed having you as a guest. Just thank you so much for your insights and for being here.
Thank you so much. I think it was so wonderful. Um, it's such a beautiful podcast. The questions were amazing. I really, really appreciate everything that you're doing, and also amplifying the voices of women and women entrepreneurs. I think it's such a beautiful thing. It's so important for society for to be heard and to be seen. And I think you are just the perfect platform to amplify our voices. Thank you
Thank
so much for having me.
Likewise. Thank you. And listeners, viewers, you know, this conversation is far from over. I hope that you've gained insights, information, that you gleaned points that will spur other discussions because this is a wide and vast topic. It is not only relevant to our times, but relevant to our future, and it can, in fact, inform the way we go forward. I hope you walked away with another aspect on creativity because some of the conversations and just in general, creativity is about life as much as the art that we discuss today. So please contact XVERSO, of course, follow in her company, of course, and let's keep these conversations going because we are, in fact, stronger together. Again, I am Khrys Vaughan. This is in her company. This marks the end of our Create series, where art and entrepreneurship converge. Over this series, we interview 8 female creatives who shared their knowledge, experience, wisdom, and their craft with us, with you, allowing us to draw business lessons from art. We heard from women like Alice Leak and Sho-Joung Kim-Wechsler, elite athlete and former VP of private equity, respectively. Also, Kellyanne Fowler and Kelly Wilson, who embraced art from their youth, and the other ladies in our series who found a home in creative spaces along the way. And while we discuss nuances of the starving artist stereotype, the creative process, materials, and technique, our conversations were also about adaptability, resilience, strategy, perceived failure, and starting over. Things we all experience to some degree that contribute toward the tapestry of life and the creation of unique works that stand the test of time, so that, as Kelly Wilson said, that we can love them and love them hard. There was another woman present during the series, although you didn't hear from her. Mary Julian, an artist from the 19th century, a rarity because she actually made a living from her art, even more so because she was appointed head of the Royal Female School of Art in Dublin, Ireland, a rarity in itself for teaching women art and design. Mary dedicated her life to empowering women through creativity, giving them options at a time where there were few, and a sense of autonomy. In 1869, her students gave her a gift to express their appreciation. One they crafted themselves with an inscription, "To Mary Julian," from her friends, students at the School of Art, Dublin, 1869. I wore this bracelet all during the Create series. What are the odds of a bracelet crafted by women in Ireland for a woman who dedicated her life to empowering them, centuries later, to make it to the wrist of a woman doing similar work in the US? Creativity takes on many shapes and forms, some as beautiful as this, but creativity is all around us. It gives life. It also continues on. So create.